school allotment guidelines. I know Dr. Sullivan will talk about some student health, and then we'll hear K2 utilization. I'm going to try to go quickly to save time for Q&A. First, I'm going to talk about some of our budget parameters. The FY27 budget serves as the guideline for developing the budget, ensuring equitable funding allocation that meets the district's strategic plan and our priorities. We've had multiple discussions. The board approved the FY27 budget priorities and parameters at the December 9th board meeting, and we'll continue with the timeline until the approval of the budget later on. In terms of our budget parameters and priorities, although all of the strategic accelerators contribute either directly or indirectly to student success, the specific parameters and priorities listed under Accelerator 1, student success in all areas for 27, are to continue to invest in equitable outcomes for all students through various strategies like closing the achievement gap, strategic staffing, early college readiness through the PSAT for 8th and 9th, which measures skills and knowledge. Continuing to invest in a new early childhood learning center to equip children with the essential tools and skills they will need throughout their academic journey here in Decatur. Under Strategic Accelerator 2, building and sustaining an engaging and inclusive culture, the 27 budget parameters and our priorities discussed were to continue to invest in our future readiness skills framework that cultivates the skills and the environment that advances students' learning to prepare them, and invest in safety and security to protect, stabilize, and promote the well-being of all of our students. Under number 3, cultivating and retaining high-quality professionals. We want to maintain a competitive compensation structure for all employees. That conversation will continue to be had. I believe as a board, we publicly stated a minimum of $1.2 million additionally towards staffing, as well as focusing on the teachers on the pay scale who maybe aren't as competitive with Decatur compared to the other areas. We recently received notice that the state health benefits plan is once again under consideration for an increase. These contributions are proposed to increase from $24,000 roughly annually. State health benefits have doubled during my time on the board, increasing from $11,000 per employee in FY20 to $22,000 in FY26, and an anticipated additional $1,700 for FY27. This functions as a unfunded mandate from the state, but benefits directly our staff and faculty. Additionally, TRS is expected to increase from the current rate of 21.91 to 22.32 in FY27. TRS does increase every year as a percentage of salary. And finally, one of our goals is to maximize revenue from the QBE, the formula they use to monitor how many students, to determine what money we get from the state, by carefully monitoring student attendance, class sizes, accurately classifying student programs, and optimizing teacher assignments based on student needs. Under Accelerator number 4, which is organizational effectiveness and excellence, our goal is to present a balanced budget where revenue is equal to or no greater than expenditures. We recently received our FY25 audit, and there were no findings. However, it was noted we need to spend down our fund balance. So it'll be necessary to reduce that balance in FY27 to the state mandated guidelines between 4 and 15%. We were above that 15%. To seek alternate funding sources such as grants and rebates, we will continue to accept tuition from non-resident students in FY27. Maintain a fund balance per board policy between 4 to 15. Develop a revenue-neutral budget that will not require any tax increases in FY27 and beyond. Ensure the budget is aligned with the district's 4 strategic accelerators. Invest in an ERP system, which is a financial human resource system to help manage the day-to-day activities such as accounting, position control, payroll, accounts payable, and human resources. We have started this process. The goal is to have a vendor in place for the school system by the end of this fiscal year. We want to ensure a transparent budgeting process that requires justification of every operational request. The first budget draft will be presented to us at the March board meeting. The community can provide input through various channels, including public comments at board meetings, community meetings such as this, and the budget feedback link on the district's website. Those comments are read by all board members. We receive the feedback. We also are looking to identify opportunities for cost effectiveness throughout the district. Those are our priorities as we look at the FY27 budget. Board Member Utz.
So I'm going to apologize in advance. There is a high frequency light flickering immediately outside of my line of sight, and it's nausea inducing. So I'm going to have to look away from it while we go through some of these slides. My name is Hans Utz, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the school allotment guidelines. They contain the formulas and criteria used to develop staffing parameters in our budgets. We follow a per pupil funding model. These guidelines set clear guardrails for the efficient and effective use of resources. We have approved these guidelines. Thank you very much, Esther. I appreciate that. It makes my life much easier. We've approved these guidelines now for the last couple of years. So our goal is to always staff as strategically as possible and focus on students so that we're maximizing those resources in a way to serve them. We are focused on closing achievement gaps, and we are seeking to align with our established budget parameters. So what you see here are the current teacher-student ratios for FY26 and 27. These have stayed the same for several fiscal years. Our goal is to honor our intent to have smaller class sizes, but do the best that we can to maximize the resources provided by the state. It is important to note that local teacher ratios are going to differ from state ratios. We are actually going to have smaller class sizes than is put forward by the state. They're basically, the state ratios are a starting point, and it's advisable for a district to strive to meet or exceed those funding levels at each grade level. It also outlines school-based staffing per building, including administrative staff, clerical staff, instructional support staff, specials, connection teachers, special ed, and operational staff at each location. The following notable staffing updates were approved in the most recent school allotment guideline, along with the codification of school-based positions that will be reflected. The staffing changes are based on operational needs and on data-driven, fiscally sound decisions that are ultimately student-focused. Dr. Sultan, in just a moment, is going to address the nurse staffing model for FY27. I suspect there's going to be some questions about that. I'm going to talk about the secondary 504 chair position that has been approved to support both DHS and Beacon Hill. Both schools will continue to have the highest number of students enrolled in 504 plans, and this new position is going to help transition meetings for those students and overall evaluations. Teaching and learning also supports this addition, as it would reduce the caseload on the school-based MTSS lead, which is necessary to continue as we improve our MTSS redesign. And now, at that point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Sultan.
All right, thank you. As a peds ER doctor, the first thing I think about when I go to work is one question: what happens when a child is sick or hurt or injured or needs help right now? In every school, our life-saving protocols are the same, regardless of whether the adult in clinic is an RN, an LPN, or a medical assistant. If a student needs emergency care, the protocols will be the same. The following notable staff updates were approved in the student allotment guidelines. If there is a head injury, trouble breathing, a seizure, or severe allergic reaction, the clinic staff will call 911 immediately and follow our district emergency procedures. For day-to-day care, every clinic will have a trained health care professional who can administer medications, provide basic first aid, and communicate directly with families. For the FY27 model, this places a school health coordinator over the program, 1 RN floater to support College Heights and the lower elementary schools, and 4 RNs of the schools with the highest student volume and medical complexity, and 2 LPNs at Beacon Hill and Decatur High School. Today we have 7 nurses and 2 medical assistants, and we are still operating with vacancies. We rely on agency nurses, and there are days when 1 nurse has to cover 2 buildings. This is not the consistency that families or staff deserve. The nursing shortage is real in hospitals, clinics, and schools. We have not reduced nursing positions by choice. We have struggled to hire and retain enough nurses to staff every clinic every single day. The FY27 model is our best next step to provide stable, predictable care. It ensures that a dedicated health professional in every clinic focuses on our limited RNs where student needs are highest and uses an RN floater to support our youngest learners. We will continue to monitor clinic data and community feedback, but this structure provides a model we can realistically staff while keeping student safety at the center of every school. And now I will pass it to Board Member Anderson, who will talk about K-2 utilization.
Hey all, I'm Tracy Anderson, and I'm glad you're here. And I'm going to talk about the K-2 utilization study. As a district, we are conducting a comprehensive review of our K-2 schools to better understand how our facilities are currently being utilized across the district. And the review should examine trends, space usage, staffing, and resources to ensure our K-2 sites are aligned with student needs while supporting operational efficiency and fiscal responsibility. Please remember that at our November 2025 board retreat, the board agreed not to make any decisions resulting from the K-2 process that would impact the 26-27 school year. Let me say it again because I may have read it awkwardly. That we agreed in November that there will be no decisions impacting next school year, the 26-27 school year. I hope that was clear. So here's a deeper look at that work. The review has been supported by the consulting firm Ed Planners, which has helped guide a structured 5-step process. Step 1 was focusing on identifying the key issues and clearly articulating the challenges we are seeking to address. Step 2 centers on defining what success looks like and establishing the criteria for evaluating those various scenarios. Step 3 involves reaffirming our guardrails as we have shared previously. No changes are imminent or final. This remains an ongoing evaluation process and an opportunity to better understand K-2 utilization across the district. Steps 4 and 5 look ahead to finalizing the planning process and ultimately making a decision. And I want to reiterate that my colleagues and I have heard the concerns. I think you all know, you've heard me say repeatedly, I love when you, and you being anyone in the community, students, stakeholders, parents, etc., ask questions. And so we appreciate what you've shared so far and moving forward. So we'll be bringing the K-2 utilization timeline forward for discussion to ensure we're proceeding in a thorough, thoughtful, and transparent manner. Thank you. And I believe now. Oh, I forgot the slides. I'm so
That's
sorry.
That's all right. Here's your slides. I'm going to help facilitate questions. Before I do, I just want to emphasize to the community that we have heard your concerns, namely about the K-2 utilization study. My board member Anderson stated, we appreciate the feedback that you've given us. And my thought would be that going forward after having conversations with board members, administrators, community members, that the K-2 utilization study be moved into the strategic plan for the next strategic plan. So going into the next 5-year strategic plan, so that would be going into around the 2027 to 2028 school year. So I think that would give us the opportunity to look at some of these metrics with a lot more detail and a lot more intentionality, and hopefully give the community the opportunity to weigh in and have a robust discussion. So again, I want community members to know that we value what you have to say, but we also want to make sure that we do this process with as much detail and as much intentionality as possible. And given that, we're happy to take questions.
As we talk about closing schools and making changes, have we talked about, when they opened Westchester, they were then third graders, the oldest grade, decide if they were gonna, what school they were going to go to? Or can we, if we know ahead of time, give these kids a chance to decide, like, oh, I wanna go, my big sister is second grade over here, I wanna stay here, even though I'm gonna go to first grade. Like, I think that one of the things that we are missing in the community is that we are looking out for the kids. So I guess it's not really a question, it's something to maybe put on the discussion board is, I can go to my currently districted school this year, or I can go to my districted school for next year. If I'm in kindergarten, I have some options as a second grader. I think that, the most magical thing though that ever happened to me was sending my kids to the same school all at the same time at one time. So I also understand that not everyone is gonna make that choice if one of their children has to stay at a certain school. So that's just something that I would like to, it's not ready to be assessed now, but just different ways that we are involving, that we are thinking about this too.
Thank you, girl. I mean, I would, sure. We discussed, thank you, attended the work meetings, you know this. The things that'll be part of the utilization study are like the walkability of schools, how we divide up, at the borders to make things more walkable. I think what Dr. Sullivan was trying to say is like, and even all of that will be pushed until what sounds like 28, 29 before we would do that, but the work needs to be done because I am guilty, and I've said this in writing and texted it, so someone's probably made a video about it. I've texted that I am guilty of making sure that schools are efficient and being used properly and that sort of stuff, and we need to do that, and I think that's a really important one. My wife and I lament all the time, like they will never be at the same school, that would be really great, we can't really walk anywhere because of where we live, but I think that's really part of the feedback and we're part of the process, which I'm excited to be a community member of.
The other thing I think I want to make a quick point on, keep me honest here, but this is not going to stop us from pursuing tuition, taking a look at pre-K in the elementary schools. That's not going to stop us from taking a look at some of those other things, because I think that learning from that is going to inform the process if we do, when we do pick it back up. So I think you'll still see work around this and seeing what we can do even without making any changes at a school level. What kind of utilization optimization can we do?
Yeah, so I guess one of the questions I have about the whole K-2 utilization is the goal, and this might come up in certain exams, but is the goal a certain percentage of utilization?
Excuse me, I don't think people on your Zoom, who are on their phone can hear.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So one of my questions is, what's the goal that we're seeking in utilization, aside from looking at walkability or looking at some of these metrics? Like, do we have known goals that you're seeking? Because from my understanding as someone who's new to the Decatur area in the last 2 years, the school system was designed with intentionality for how we had those K-2 in certain schools now, previously K-3. And it, from my understanding, was never even at 100% utilization of the buildings, given the way that they designed the grade. So what's the target that would satisfy the board when looking at the utilization of schools? Like, is it 100%? I've seen different figures that say we're at 100% or say that we're at 60%. So I'm still just a little confused about what the target is when looking at these metrics for what makes it a viable school or what makes it a viable option. And I guess, you know, the other piece of that that's slightly still fuzzy for me is
So great questions, and I think there is a short answer that says that is part of what we're wanting to engage the community to help us determine, right? Like a part of this is in working with the community to come to some of those answers. I think one of the numbers that has been tossed around is that 200 student number, which is where capital support from the state kicks in. That's a rough target, but I also don't want to say that that's a hard and fast rule if we're close, right? So I think the question that you had around population declines and things of that nature, one of the benefits of taking a little bit of time is what we don't know right now, and the demographers don't know right now, is whether the particular acute decline that we are experiencing right now is a new normal, or is that the result of a pandemic-related declination in population? And so taking a little bit of time will help us actually see the maturation in some of those numbers so that we'll be able to make better decisions coming out of that. And so I think that's probably one of the huge benefits of taking a pause, is to see where those numbers are going.
I think also one of the other things that I found interesting in looking at some of these data over time is how one or two schools can have an abundance, and then you have some schools that are kind of always hanging with a lot lower numbers. And so it's also something that we need to consider is how our resources get allocated, and if we're okay with that. Are we okay with some schools that have, 220 plus students, and then some schools that are gonna hang out with less than 150? Is that something that we're okay with in terms of resource utilization, principals, cafeteria staff, bus routes? Are we okay with that? So that's also something that we need to dig into. Or do we, if you have one school that is still operating with trailers, is that something that we need to, is that always been a trend, or like, board member Ed said, is that just been that one school had a big burst in population, and when some of those kids move on to Tally Street, it will go down? That's something that we need to look at. Some of the trends have been fairly consistent if we look back 5 or 6 years, and then some may be that they may level out. But I think this is also not a problem that's unique to City School of Decatur. Dealing with schools that have declining population or variance in population is not unique to us. It's something that multiple school boards have struggled with, especially in the past year or 2 years.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Marcy Mascaro. I have a son that's a senior at Decatur High and one that just graduated both from the German IB program. And I love this discussion about what you're calling forecasting. And I just want to point out that you can be reactive or proactive. So I want to offer perhaps a proactive solution, because I understand that the board's core concern is underutilization in K2 specifically. So perhaps an enrollment driven solution would be to introduce a first grade language immersion magnet to increase the demand for those seats. So language immersion works as a utilization strategy because it must start early. Families who want immersion cannot wait till our middle school where they enroll to learn the language. So if they enroll in first grade, this creates that immediate time-sensitive demand exactly where our enrollment is weakest right now. For example, my youngest son attended a public first grade immersion program in Miami, where I'm from, where he learned German. We later relocated to Germany through my job, and that early immersion allowed him to integrate academically and socially with ease. He was graduated 4 months early from their German as a second language program. When we returned back to the U.S. and landed in the city of Decatur, he entered the middle year IB program in German through grades 8 through 12. And I do think he had an advantage, not just because we lived in Germany, but because he started at the first grade level, which is where they can pick up languages so quickly. So Decatur already offers a middle school and high school program, and so what's really missing is that early on-ramp. So adding immersion, language specifically at the K2 level, usually at first grade,
sorry, I'm just gonna stand because I can't see some of you, but, I think for the first speaker and now, this discussion, for me, I wanna consider all factors. I know why I personally moved to Decatur schools and chose Decatur schools for my daughter. And so I think it is a matter of not just looking at building, not just looking at finance, not just looking at neighborhood, but also at educational programs. So, I appreciate the fact that I think we all now have time, to do a thorough job in considering, next steps. So, thank you.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Oh, you want to? No. Let's hear what we're talking about. Come on.
So, it's good to be here. Thank you for, my name is Robert Fryer. I'm a parent. I'm a Westchester student and a student who will be attending Westchester for kindergarten next year. I'm currently in a private pre-K. First, I wanted to thank you all, for listening to the community, taking into consideration some of the concerns about timing, timeline, but also I think about the monumental impact decisions about utilization, especially as they were initially framed in terms of closure versus not, or closure, multiple schools at one point, but all of that is a really big deal and would have had a really big impact on the community and deserves a kind of holistic approach and a strategic vision, or making that a component of a future kind of strategic plan makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate that. Thank you. There's a couple things I wanted to ask you about, but first, when I came into this building, I'd never been to Tally before. I was like, wow, this is really, really nice. Like, what a beautiful building. It looks new. It's been, what, like 5 or 6 years, something like that? So we're talking about now, it's like 28, 29, and that's a 5-year plan that would start around then, I guess. I'm thinking about like 5 or 6 years ago, when like this building opened, and this building, in large part because there was a space need, because we had too many students, and now we're talking about too few. Let's leave it open, is one way of thinking about it, as like things can change very, very, very quickly, especially with our lower elementaries. So that's just something, like I'm reflecting on that. The two things I wanted to ask about, one of them was thinking about the non-resident tuition program. Got some information that indicates maybe it's like expanding a lot. It's not clear if that's courtesy versus non-resident tuition. It'd be great to get clarity on that, because that's a big opportunity, but has some complications about demographics and other things to think about. So I'd love to get your feedback or what you're thinking on that. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, I have to look at my notes or forget it, is about this decision regarding incorporating utilization into a strategic plan kind of process. So we just got an email, some people just got an email, I think from Jarvis, saying, okay, well, here's the plan for committees and meetings and the schedule and the timeline. Now it sounds like that's being changed. So I'm wondering, like, when would that kind of a decision be final for, like, delaying further? Would that require a vote? Is it going to be a notice to parents? What if there's people out there in the community who say, hey, actually, I wanted to get this done like right away. This is a big need. I don't agree with that approach, but I want to make sure that their opinion is heard, I guess. So just what's the process there? Are there going to be votes? When are we going to find out? Thank you.
I'll start with that. We can't make any, can't take any votes, we can't make any board decisions in a community meeting. All that will have to happen during the February board meeting, so I would just invite you to come to that meeting where we'll dig into that bit.
Question.
I'll talk about the tuition piece. Yes, we are in the process of opening, once again, registration for all areas, for pre-K, courtesy tuition, non-resident tuition, things of that nature. Non-resident tuition is something that we are expanding the number of seats, and we're finalizing those numbers by the end of, today is Wednesday, by the end of Friday. And the reason why we have to wait until then is because we're in the middle of school meetings with the principals on their allotments. And so there will be a presentation actually a part of either the board retreat, which is February 23rd, or the board meeting that will take a deep dive into non-resident tuition. Courtesy tuition does not necessarily expand, it's just the fact that if a member of our staff wants to bring their children, they can. So, that's not really an expansion, but the non-resident piece, yes, it is.
Can I just make sure I understand? So courtesy tuition applies to any CSP employee at all levels of, does it also apply to the city of Decatur? Okay. And so we'll get the numbers then to see the trends in terms of courtesy students the last 5 years, predictable courtesy students moving forward.
Some of that information is already on our data visualization page, so we do break out courtesy tuition versus non-resident tuition versus enrolled, i.e. you live in the boundaries. It's already out on our website.
Hi, Dana Potterfield. The first 2 weeks of January. I wanted to ask 2 questions. One, I know in the board meeting there was a mention of reaching out to some of the other neighborhoods to try and get more of an equal community around some of the conversations with the utilization. How is that going?
So, like I mentioned before, I think with the committees and how the committees look going forward, they probably will look a little differently. So give us at the February board meeting and we'll provide all those
Okay, so
details.
those committees are gonna be ready by February 5th, I think, or February 4th is when we're having our first committee meeting, or those dates have changed? And was the email, did the email go out, cause I didn't get an email?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. I'm Jarvis Adams. If we've never formally met, I serve here as the Chief Operations Officer and also kind of the owner of this elementary utilization study. And so today I sent out an email to our co-facilitators. We will have a meeting on the 28th of January. That is the community facilitators along with administration facilitators. We're gonna wait till after the board meeting before we kick off the full committee meetings. To answer your first question, I don't know, I thought I saw Jessica walk in here. She provided me a good list and a good resource to grab all the HOA community group leadership. So I have a strong list, but I have not reached out to them just yet because I want everything to settle. With the facilitators, I don't wanna bring too many people to the table
Fair.
new.
Yep,
Does that make sense?
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
But
but,
I didn't.
but we do wanna canvass all of Decatur, the business community.
Yeah.
Some of our senior citizens, wanna make sure we get as many voices to the table. I'm glad that we have this extended timeline to have this conversation. That way it won't feel so rushed. And we can sit down and really have some deep thought versus, I get it, my child's in 1st grade, I don't want my school closed. So
Yeah.
I think we have some real good conversations.
Okay, awesome.
Did I answer your questions?
That's really helpful, yes.
Okay.
No, really. I just have one other quick question.
Is it for me or?
No, that's
Okay,
actually
I'm
for
sorry.
them.
That was one of your questions.
That was, but he answered it, yeah, cause they're gonna kind of change.
It's not happening February 5th. So we can have our last night at Westchester.
Yes. Yes, you can.
Hopefully I'm not.
My other question is about tuition and just promotion around tuition students. You know, last year, I actually had quite a few families come up to me and they were like, oh my gosh, Decatur's offering tuition opportunities, like, heard nothing about it, and I was like, yeah, maybe that was on me, cause I'm your friend. So just would love to hear your plans, and maybe this is for a larger communication team to share out with the community, what our plans are for really getting the word out that tuition is an opportunity to attend our incredible schools. So would love to hear what that looks like.
Yes. So we are beginning what would be that marketing campaign, really just with the window opening in 2 weeks. So we haven't launched it as of yet, literally the website just is going up. So we will include some pieces on the Decatur-ish about that information through ads. Last year it ran on all news stations, that we were providing that through a media process. And so we will do that once again. So
I'll look for it. Totally, yeah.
We did though, one of the things we did hear very clearly from the community through this process was that some effort needs to be put behind promoting these excellent schools to get more tuition. Like if literally the issue is that we don't have enough kids in the schools right now and we have the opportunity to provide tuition, then run it like a business. We need to reach out and so we've heard that, and I think you'll see a more concentrated effort this time.
Cool, thank you.
Sorry.
To clarify, last year the purpose of tuition was to levelize classrooms. So,
Yes.
So if 20 kids showed up at Westchester ready for kindergarten, we needed more bodies for that, and that was the total intent of tuition. So you would not have seen a mass, let's email everyone, let's drive a lot of interest to it. As soon as the numbers filled up with the people who got the media stuff, you didn't need 5,000 applicants for it. So this will be a much different process. I just wanted to clarify.
Thanks, James.
First time Northern Pilot.
Yeah.
It was first time return, I would say, Northern Pilot.
Yeah, James, that was gonna be 100% of my point. I think we need to be clear about what the intent of the tuition program is. I think as it stood last year, it was to not have to add a whole another classroom or a whole additional teacher. It was to fill spots in existing classrooms. So if you had a classroom that could hold 22 students in the 3rd grade and you needed 8 more bodies, then that was what we were looking to fill, not to, like James said, had 5,000 more applicants. If the goal is to revamp the tuition program, then that is a different outcome and will require different media kind of push. I think in full transparency, I think this is a public school system, so we would have to balance that against kind of the goals and values of having how many tuition paying students would we allow? What would we, I think there's some metrics there and some optics there, but ultimately realize that, as Board Member Hernan said, the tuition paying program as it was to fill existing seats, not to add multiple classrooms to existing schools. That was the way that it was intended initially.
Would it be correct to say that for the most part, we'd be appealing to people who live nearby? So like I live in Oakhurst, where go 3 houses over and now you're in Atlanta. And so I'm assuming that we're starting with pretty close proximity, because I'm just guessing that most people aren't gonna wanna drive 45 minutes unless they're staffed to get here. So yeah, it sounds like we can look forward to some good campaigning.
Hi guys, I'm Lorraine, I'm your new board member, and I'm learning a lot here too. So what I understand, and I want to clarify for everybody if you're having this question, is that I think the tuition students are just for the lower elementary. No, through 5th grade, so it's still elementary level, not high school or middle school. Okay, and that's for next year, okay, that helps.
So another thing I want to say, just because there's a lot of talk across our state and across our nation around the privatization of public schools. City Schools of Decatur cannot take tuition from any other Promise Scholarship recipient. So Promise Scholarship recipients are students who are enrolled in schools that fall within the bottom 25% of the state of Georgia. And even though there are some schools that are close to Decatur that do fall on that Promise Scholarship list, we cannot take those dollars. Additionally, more information was just shared by the governor of the state of Georgia opting in to the One Big Beautiful Bill for scholarships for families. These are the types of things that we need clarification on from a timeline perspective, because we are a public school system. So as I said, we will have a presentation. That official presentation will be in February, but there are some other things that we as a public school system must iron out as we are bringing in, because that announcement for the expansion or in opting into the One Big Beautiful Bill just came yesterday. Yeah, I thought it was yesterday. They just run together. So yes, it just came out yesterday. So there is a lot of things we need to work through.
Okay, so many of you know me, I'm long-winded, so I tried to make notes, so I'll be succinct, but anyways. So I am Nicole Friedman. I have a son at Oakhurst Elementary where I'm on the SLT, and I'm the VP of the PTO. I have a kid at College Heights this year in pre-K. I'm also on that advisory board, and I sit at the SCLT, so I have a nice vantage point. In 2025, I started really getting involved in watching the board meetings, and I've watched every one since then, but it was really because of federal funding. I was concerned about dollars going away and what we were gonna do to address that. So, I then nerded out. My mom was a teacher, my grandfather was superintendent of schools, so I'm very much invested in this, as you can see from my volunteerism. I was one of the, I think it was 20 people that responded to the survey about whether or not they should do public comment at 6:30 or whatever. That's before everybody else was joining, which is so great. I really love that everybody's come out. I say that to say, you guys were doing all of the work in the pre-work sessions about engagement. And I know it was talked about, I feel like it was my comment, and that's what I'm looking at you, Gordon Anderson, saying, hey, there's some people reaching out about communication. This was prior to any hot topics. So my questions are kind of surrounding that. I think prior to everything going on, it's not just a transparency and a trust issue. I think from my experience now in the last year and a half, it kind of crash course. It seems like there's a misunderstanding of roles and responsibilities within the community. I think that there's also a not clear understanding of so like a civics lesson, because it's been a while for all of us. And I also think that there's a struggle with, they need support, right? So they need somebody to kind of walk them through what is going on. And that support, I feel like, has not been there. I think you guys are trying to get to it, but I don't think it's fully been there. So there's tons of information out there, but it requires constituents to do what I do, to spend hours among hours sifting through, summarizing, creating PDFs, sending it out to individuals in order to combat misinformation or rumors or whatever. It's just a lot to go through. And I've already reached out to the operations team to figure out what I can do to partner with some suggestions I've gotten in the community to try and improve that communication. So I'm here to do it with you. But all of that said, I promise the questions are coming. I think we have an opportunity to support and facilitate the conversations. I think there's also an accountability factor. So I think it's good to have a check and balance. So the operations team should hold the board responsible, the board should hold operations, same thing with constituents, holding the board responsible. To that end, you guys just went through the norms, and I know you have time to discuss this, but my question is, a couple others too, but when you guys are discussing this with operations, I know that there's emails that are gonna go straight to, the superintendent or one of the officials, but how are you guys paying attention to the themes? Because obviously there are themes that are occurring. If you're not getting those emails, if they're going through, you may not see common things that should affect policy. And maybe you are, so this is a follow-up question. If you are, where's the transparency to the constituents to know, oh, they heard me, they caught this theme, and they're thinking about this theme whenever they're making X, Y, Z decision, right? So I think there's a component here of when you're making policy, understanding those themes that people are communicating in their questions. Be it teacher pay, there's tons of different things. So that's one question.
The other one is, what is the board going to do to help the community and the constituents understand the difference in roles and responsibilities? I think it's really something that I'm hoping you guys will partner with myself and others in. So I would like to know what you guys are doing that. On an accountability factor, what metrics are you guys using? So we have the norms. When operation is answering these questions, on both sides, what is operations doing to hold the board accountable? If they're doing the norms, then what are you guys doing to audit what the operations team is doing to ensure? And can you be transparent with those audits that are being performed so that we see that those things are, in place? And then, is there an action plan in place to really bridge this obvious gap, the elephant in the room, right? That there's a problem here, right? So I'm not expecting you to give that action plan, but if you guys step back and consider, okay, what's our strategy here in addressing this? Because there needs to be steps and a plan and goals and measurable, things along the way. And finally, what do you expect our community, like I'm in all of these different groups, what do you want from us in engagement? How can we help? What do you think it means to be engaged by constituents? And what don't you want to see? How do we hold you accountable? That kind of thing. And then finally, from the student perspective, I'd love to understand and hear more about if the trust concerns are there for the students. I promise that's the last one. Sorry. I can put that all in the email if you'd like.
Actually, please do.
Yeah. Let me just start off by saying thank you, Nicole, because I feel like I'm probably about where you're at, just digging in and learning everything. And I've seen your summaries from the last school board meeting. Kristen, I know hers too. She's forwarded to me, and thank you. They're so comprehensive, and I think that's what we all need. So I hope that we can partner with each other. And I think we do want to be more transparent and accountable. I think all of us do, so that we can answer questions better. And so that's just my thought. What else?
Sorry, I know that was a lot.
No, I like it. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
like your enthusiasm.
And I think of the book that we were studying, was it last year with the yellow paint? Because it's a bit like when I'm teaching students writing, like there's the really easy stuff to answer, and there's a reason why we have that kind of delineation, I think, between operations and governance, and it's easily demonstrated. But what about the more nuanced things? And, I would argue we all have an opportunity here because I don't think any of us have been involved in some of the processes we had. So, thank you, and please do send that email.
Yeah, and I've also talked to, I'm gonna get with the operations team about, things we can do systemically in order to hopefully make that easier. So I'm here to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. I really like the idea of the civics education, and thank you for all you're doing on the SLT. When I was on the SCLT, I used to post along Facebook, this is everything that happened. And I stopped the day that I posted at the bottom that I'd be happy to buy anyone a drink. And it turned into people yelling at me that not everyone drinks. This was before I was on the board. I was like, okay, I've had enough. That was it, because obviously not everyone drinks. I do. And this was leading up to COVID, because I had this habit, if I saw a teacher, I would buy a beer. I would send them along incorrectly. People don't drink. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for that. A couple of things about civics. One, every GSBA meeting we go to, so Georgia School Board Association, the two things that are going to be on the board are legal and communication, and how everyone is struggling with the school board makes its policy, and there's certain things we can't talk about, and there's certain things we do talk about, and how it gets out in the community. And then some people are like, oh, you all got a local newspaper that covers your stuff, that's great. I'm like, yeah, it is great, until they choose a headline that we don't know where it came from, and now everyone is mad about it. And I've spoken at, I think, 7 neighborhoods in the last 6 months, and the thing that I keep repeating all of them is, I often just don't know what people are going to be mad about, and it is impossible to communicate about everything, because I don't have oversight over what Jarvis does in the operations. I don't have, very famously, who complimented Tally, this building is beautiful. Right when I was on the the board, they built the art building, and it was set up for a kiln, and the previous operations director didn't put a kiln in the kiln room, and I lost my mind. I was like, what are we doing? And just sort of took my board member hat off, because I got the answer that we couldn't do it, and then some people in the Tyler neighborhood were like, that's like a $5,000 kiln. If 100 of us can donate some money, and we found a kiln company was willing to give us the cost, it was like, I was so mad about it, but I had no idea as a board member because it fell down, and so there is that gap between things that I know about or don't know about. Like, we built a beautiful weight room for weightlifting at the high school. I found out about it when Jarvis showed it to us, showed it to Mr. Utz and I afterwards, like, hey, let me go show you something that I'm proud about. Someone could have yelled at me because we bought the wrong weights or something like that, and I wouldn't have known about it. And so I encourage people to familiarize themselves with what we do have control of or don't have control of. Cheese sandwiches came to mind, which is a very sensitive subject. I did not know that policy was going to be in place as a board member, but I did know that we told the nutrition department we're running a massive debt for that seemingly is for no reason. Handle that, and then they handled it, and then people are, angry. And then I found out that still to this day, 0 cheese sandwiches have been served in the city schools of Decatur. Is that still true? If that's not true anymore, I apologize. But at the time, we had not served any, but it's how the nutrition department operationally handled it. And I lost sleep because I had people calling me, my college roommate from Illinois calling me, like, how dare you pass a policy to do this? I'm like, that's not what we do, that's not what I did. I'm so sorry that got interpreted that way, and the kids felt that way and felt bad. And so there was that gap there, and we worked on it. But if anyone has a litmus that they can go through our agenda and tell me what people will be mad about and what people won't be mad about, I would love that assistance, and I'll buy you coffee because you're doing the work and I appreciate you. Or beer, I'll buy either, even though people don't drink. So, sorry about that.
And I don't even think it's about mad too, I just think there's just, understanding the issue.
And often, and I don't mean to be dismissive, and I apologize for talking. What I'm trying to say is, often people will be angry, and I'll think rightfully so. I'm like, I didn't know about that, or that wasn't within our realm. Thank you for bringing it to our attention, but that's not how it's brought up. That's not something we can address, or that, that's what I'm saying. Me dismissing anger is not dismissing people for being angry. It's being upset that we did a poor job. Like, I apologize that we didn't communicate many of the things we need to communicate offhand. Partially is a lack of knowledge. Partially, I was really excited. Dr. Sullivan threw some dates out there, because often we'll say the future, and then I'll find out 3 days later that was interpreted by Jim here from Decatur as next year, and then the fire is off. But she kind of put a date on it, so that feels a little bit better. So hopefully that kind of helps. But she didn't do a date because we can't vote on the date. Sorry.
Speaking of things we don't control, let's talk about housing for a second, because we have time now, and that gives space for some conversations that maybe there hasn't been room for. This is the most useful trend line from the budget book. This is the enrollment trending. It shows how this huge wave of people came through, and that caused a lot of the columns that I read when CCP wrote about how are we going to deal with the housing policies of the city, where there was this massive wave of people coming through and people kind of busting out the seams. Now we're in a different problem space. What does that mean in terms of the housing that we want? I am currently, or we are, me and my fiance are looking for a home. All the new buildings that got built in the last 10 years, you can't do a family home. Like, there are people that have bought 2 condos next to each other and then combine them for that. To the extent that there's a chance now to bend some of these curves, because I noticed this future enrollment is a little vague right now. It just says 293 at Classroom Forever.
Yeah, it's a problem.
What are the things that we can do to affect that? Now that we're kind of bearing the fruits of a policy 10 years ago, it was like, let's stop all the families, now we want more. I would love to take some time to think about that now, because that is a thing that affects any new building that's happening, either the Avondale MARTA or the East Lake MARTA, we think about now. So that's my ask.
I think that's great. I think that's one opportunity we have to be a lot more transparent and visual with our partnership with the city. We are two different governing bodies, we are 2 different elected groups, but we are also partnerships in wanting the best for our citizens and our constituents. So affordable housing, access to affordable housing, making sure that our constituents can buy homes, public school system, I think is something that we can, have conversations with the city. Now, to your point, there are things that the city controls, and there's things that the Board of Education controls, and some of these things will probably be in the purview of the city, but it doesn't mean that we can't have, a seat at the table to have the conversation. And to answer your question, I just, it was a thought, something that struck me. I think there's another opportunity, as the board chair, you hear from me almost as much as I hear from you, for better or for worse. But I often do see a lot of themes to emails. Often when I see a lot of them, there's a theme to them. We talked about that during our norms, but what I think where we do have an area to improve is to see what policy or policies is this hitting at. A lot of the time when we get thematic emails, a lot of them do fall under the purview of the superintendent. And maybe where we can start to add a little, where I can start to add a little bit to my response, is making sure that people understand, although this came to us, there's not a policy that covers my response, so this is why I'm sending you to Jarvis. I send about 100 emails per day to Jarvis, because this is just under his purview, but maybe adding that educational piece so that folks understand would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jimmy. Can y'all hear me? I'm a first grade parent at Westchester, and I'm on the PTA, and I have a pre-K student at College Heights. Mr. Adams, this comment is for you, the first one. One way to bring in a little more money for the nutrition program might be to add weenies on the menu more. At College Heights, they love them. I told my 5-year-old that. Also, I know we've gotten some great answers about tuition. Another thing that has been a frequent topic of conversation is bringing pre-K into lower elementaries. And I think there's a lot of just misunderstanding or uncertainty about what it would take to do that. I mean, I know that College Heights was once a lower elementary or an elementary school. It would be really helpful, I think, to have a little more insight as to what's preventing that from happening sooner rather than later. And this kind of goes along with what Bernard was saying, but just thinking towards the future, how this beautiful building was built when it was bursting at the seams. It's not now. Faith, was able to house all of Claremont last year. Like, what can we do to make these buildings more dynamic as our student population changes? So if we were to need to put pre-Ks in lower elementaries, how could we do that without causing, something that would cost a lot of money or not be as efficient?
Yes, so we are working with what's the entity called Right From the Start as we speak to relocate some of our pre-K classes that are currently at College Heights to our other buildings. You notice I said relocate. We have asked about adding additional pre-K, and at this time, we are not allowed, City Schools of Decatur, to add additional pre-K because we do not have a pre-K waiting list. But they not only look at our pre-K waiting list, they look at all of their pre-K providers here in Decatur to synthesize and analyze whether or not there is a true demand for pre-K. Now, this is an annual process that you can petition before them, so we are gonna move with the relocation, but we're working through that process.
So sorry, one follow-up question. Does the relocation mean there be no more pre-K at College Heights at all?
No.
Okay.
No, we want to make sure that those that live in that area would be able to access, as well as those that live closer on the other side would too.
You talk about PPE or counts.
Yes, so the question, Mr. Herndon asked me to answer is what is the capital outlay, which is the way our students are counted across the district, even though all the students are housed at College Heights. At the Georgia Department of Education, because the law has changed for capital outlay to include also pre-K, they include our numbers. So that's just something for you to know.
That is helpful to know, and I think the thought amongst a lot of parents at least is that if it were closer, I mean, it takes me almost an hour to get from way over near Westchester to College Heights, but it's fine, it's worth it. But I think more people would be interested if they didn't have to do that, so.
That was gonna be my exact point, right? So Bright from the Start is looking at right from the start related data, but there are, certainly I fell into this. I wasn't gonna put my kids on a wait list for College Heights and then deal with an hour drive to college. Like, we just went to the preschool right around the corner, which is not right from the start. And so all 4 of my kids were never counted as a part of those numbers and wouldn't show up in the numbers that we're talking about now. Had there been a preschool that was available right around the corner, which is some of what we're looking at trying to do, I would have 100% sat them there, right? So it is, to Dr. Rutter's point, a year lag. Like, it takes a little bit for that to show up, which is another reason why I've taken a pause and actually offering some of these programs and seeing how the data shakes out is gonna help us inform that as we go forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you all so much for holding this community meeting. It's so helpful to hear answers directly from you all. One thing my husband and I always say is that Decatur parents show up. We always do, and it's really lovely also to see so many parents here speaking. I have 2 daughters. I have a 7th grader at Beacon Hill, and then I also have a 3rd grader who goes right here at Tally. And the interesting conversation to me is that my older daughter at Beacon, she was in 1st grade when the switchover happened, when Tally was opened up. And I distinctly remember that when the 3rd graders left to Tally, it was amazing. It was like, oh my gosh, there's so much space in the school. And I thought that was actually part of the intention. And I actually have data here. I'm happy to share, like, I can just here, you can pass this around. So I don't have like it blown up or in a printout or something. This is actually something that a fellow parent put together. This is all of the schools, all the K-2 schools, the data showing where the percentage of occupancy each year from 2015 to the present. And what you will notice is that there is a dramatic drop at 2020. Unsurprisingly, because Tally opened it up. So my question, which is following up on somebody else asked a similar question, this school was built with this intention that things were going to keep increasing, the demographics were going to keep increasing. It hasn't happened. Now, has that same sort of evaluation been done for the new ECLC, especially considering that birth rates are decreasing? I mean, I'm hearing about it every day. I'm sure you all are hearing about it. So I'd like to understand, has there been that sort of demographic analysis?
Yes, so the best way to think about it, these are rough numbers, but in a age 0 all the way through 2nd grade, each year, there are roughly 250 kids in each age cohort, right? So that math would say 750 kids in age K2, right, for those 3 grades. It's actually a little over 800, but like, let's just keep the math easy. That same 250 holds true for 0 to 4. That's 5 years. So that means that there is, 1,250, the actual number is about 1,300 kids that are in that cohort. We have 350 capacity in our schools at College Heights, is that correct? And Fraser. All right, so College Heights and Fraser is about 350. So that means there are a substantial number of kids outside of city schools in Decatur that aren't served, right? So yes, we have done that demographic analysis, and we actually are pretty sophisticated about understanding where there are significant numbers of kids that just have no access at all to affordable early childhood education, which is exactly what we're attempting to serve.
But I thought I just heard Superintendent Whitaker say that some of those kids from College Heights are moving to Westchester or whatever the north side is. That's going to open up space at College Heights, right?
It will, not for pre-K, it will for 0 to 3, yes, right, am I correct about that?
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm about to say, pre-K is in trailers, we cannot put 0 to 3 in trailers. So although we will move the pre-K classes out, the 0 to 3 will still not be able to be served in an increased capacity, because you can't serve 0 to 3
So
in the portables, the cottages.
So is this demographic data something that you all can share with all of us? Because at least I haven't seen it.
Sure. Yep, yep.
I think to that question, I think parsing out a little bit more of the courtesy would be helpful, because I believe at our capital projects presentation in June, is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, as we look at staff, and if staff might be, if not predominantly female, but also having children, and so I think it would be helpful for everyone to see not only that data, but also how we are projecting when it comes to not just courtesy tuition, but looking at our staff who are needing young ECLC services versus K-5 services versus middle and high school.
Also, as a follow-up question, I guess that may help me interpret that table for courtesy paying tuition, or courtesy paying students in K-2 or tuition paying students, where does their head count go? Because they belong to the Wilson Center, but there's no Wilson Center graph, so where are those students housed?
So courtesy tuition is not just for Wilson. So example, if you're a teacher here at Tally and your child goes to Beacon Hill, they're counted in Beacon Hill. If you are a Tally teacher and your child is K-2, we are holding them in the Westchester count. So because we're trying to get our numbers as elevated as possible, so we put those children in the Westchester count. But at the same time, when it comes to anyone who is in the Fraser Center, which these are before they get to pre-K, this is, I think about teachers that I see around the district that are pregnant, with child. They are looking, this is a true recruitment tool that I would be able to put my child at the Fraser Center and have it at about half market rate. So market rate for 0 to 3 is about $24,000 a year. And so it's a true perk, if you will, to have our Fraser Center be able to serve our staff's children.
I think just to wrap up this one point, I think the concern that many parents have, like me, is seeing what's happened at Tally, seeing this beautiful school built up, and then you're seeing decreasing occupancy that's coming along the way. And if we're spending $23 million on building a new ECLC, and in another 5 years, because of declining birth rates, it's only at 60% occupancy when it was projected to be at 120% occupancy, that's a real burden on taxpayers, it's a burden on our students, it's a burden on our teachers. So I'd just like to find out, I know that y'all have really pushed back against the idea of using Soul Shine. Is that even something that you consider? Because this seems like a very inexpensive way to at least tackle it in the short term for maybe a few years. And then let's see, maybe everybody's going to be having babies in the next few years.
Yeah. So thanks for that question specifically about Soul Shine. There are going to be constraints about what we can speak about, because that is an exec session and it is related to real estate. But it's going to be looked at. Let me just leave it at that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for your time.
Good evening, I'm a tuition parent. So I think I'd like to start by, it's disheartening to hear that my daughter will remain in a holding pattern, while you consider to continue the tuition program. we're considering, coming here. We pulled my daughter through private school. So the application process last year wasn't until like, about May. So I already paid my private school tuition, didn't have to pay the additional, because we're really committed to being here. But hearing that there's, you be in this holding pattern of trying to figure out, where will my 5-year-old look? You're sending my 2-year-old. I would love for her to experience principal triplet at Oakhurst. But if that's not in the cards, I'd rather just go back to private school.
Well, one, if you're already here, you will be able to matriculate through. So we have, and the board made that very clear, actually in the policy for non-resident tuition, that you will be able to matriculate, but you still have to fill out the application and do the process, which is what is traditional, I believe, in the private school setting. From a timeline perspective, we are moving it closer to the timeline of what traditional private schools have. And that's because, as the board has said already, the first time we did it, it was definitely more of a pilot. We needed to understand the processes, all the pieces. Well, now we're ready to, really understand it and be able to provide it. So yes, I don't want you to think that you're in a holding pattern. Yes, you can.
I think our email just says, the board will reconsider for every year. So I think it's.
We are, just to be very, very clear, we are examining whether we want to expand and potentially significantly grow the tuition program. We are not indexed towards shutting it down or shrinking it, right? So I just want to make that really, really explicit. That sounded like a big piece of the concern that you had. That is not, no, we are talking about potentially promoting it a lot and growing it, not pulling it back.
And then may I suggest an earlier application or renewal time period, and this was, it was February.
February, and that is when we open it, everything up. So courtesy, all of those things, but that is more so in alignment with public school, with private school, and the windows are in alignment with them. We also, I'll be honest, we have to start our budget process and get those things solidified first, which did only come through. I mean, you think about the school allotment guideline and the things that were on the presentation, that must be solidified first, because then we can move forward in a lot of other administrative functions. Thank you.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having us and having a bit of a discussion. That's really great. I'm a dad of a kindergartner in Westchester, and like a lot of other people in the neighborhood, a dad of a 3-year-old who's hopefully going to attend Westchester as well. I just wanted to ask about, for the committees, there's an ask here for cost benefit analysis, deep dives into projection data, looking at grants, funding, sources, and potential cost savings from closure, which, for better or worse, also include people, actual impact of capital outlay and how much money we're talking about, if we actually need it, which y'all may or may not get y'all, $8 to $10 million possible savings. I still have those listed, 15 ECLCs open in the last couple of years for half the price of those. But I didn't really want to talk about that right now, sorry. That's some really intense, heavy accounting to do, and a few of us are really actually excited, kind of nerdy parents who are into that kind of stuff. But I just really hope that we can give the committees enough time and also the organizational structure and support to be able to do that in terms of access to numbers, in terms of access to data, in terms of just how we can actually collate that stuff and put it together, and also the fact that we hire a consultant, and I don't know what what Ed Planner's kind of scope is. Are they able to help? Are they going to be able to pull preview some of this work, or, that's kind of the question, the structure there.
I think that now, as Mr. Adams said, we have a little bit more runway for the committees to do their work, and I think the board definitely looks forward to, still partnering with the community in this fashion. I think, what the overall committee structure and their timeline looks like may change. But I think some of those details will come out in the next, couple of weeks, definitely in the next month, we'll have a little bit more, structure to it. And, I definitely recognize and apologize that some of this has been a little bit of start and stop, and a little bit of, gas and brakes. But, hopefully now that, there's a little bit more of a runway in front of you, we'll be able to still utilize the committees. But, exactly what your timeline and your goals look like just may change a little bit over the next month. So, it just begs a little bit of patience from you.
Yes.
One clarification I have too is I understand ed planners, we're not using them any further, so it sits with.
That's what I was just asking, I was like,
Yes.
are they still?
Yeah, is that correct?
It's gonna be with Jarvis.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
that's what I thought.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
what
I thought somebody
thought.
mentioned it earlier, so that's why I thought.
And that's-
Yeah.
Now I'm like, okay, cool, good to know.
Hi, I'm Marcy Roberts, I have 3 kids in the system, and my question for you guys is budget related. I've heard in the last meeting, you guys have talked about how there needs to be a spend down, because there's a surplus, right? And so my question for you is, how do you intend to spend it down? That's it.
We're building it now, so that is going to be answered over the process of the budget. The core reason why we're in the situation where we are right now is because last year, Dr. Broom, was it? No, I know Decatur County, but was it in May or something they let us know about it? It was very late, right? So we found out very late in the budget process. Effectively, Decatur County said, oh, by the way, we've been keeping $4 million extra, or $3 million extra from you here, and so that all ended up going to the reserve. So that put us a fair bit over the limits. We need to bring that back down. I don't know, I think we're in the process of building the budget now, and so that will be answered over the next few months. If somebody knows the answer to that question, Raul, let's please answer it, but I think we may not.
Just to give you more of a timeline of the budget build. So in the month of February, we will hear from the DeKalb County Tax Commissioner, we will hear from our city manager, City of Decatur, and you will also have a 5-year historical look back. That is in February. Then in March, there will be the presentation of the first draft, as well as the use of federal, as well as SPOS and state dollars presentation. That is in March. After that March meeting, we have another community meeting. And then we go back and look at that feedback and provide a second draft that comes in April. After that April meeting, once again, we have another community meeting. And then after that, then in May, we will then be able to say, based upon this iterative process of the budget build, then we will say, this is the tentative budget that then would ultimately be adopted. And then we move into the millage conversation once you know what the budget actually is. So that's kind of the timeline for the remainder of the semester.
So are you saying, will the community have input on how, if there is a surplus, how that surplus is used?
Every time we have one of these meetings, which one is in March and one is in April, this is when we have that discussion.
So I can put my plug in for teacher raises?
Yeah, starting teachers in Decatur are now the highest compensated teachers in the greater metro area, if they have it, which is fantastic. But I love the question because it is at the heart of Hans and I had a public, almost squabble at the board meeting last March about when you fund things that are permanent to decrease a surplus, it raise your hair a little bit as well, because we have said we're gonna spend at least $1.2 million additional dollars compensating faculty and staff. We also are gonna increase bus driver compensation to keep them in line with the metro. We've also said, a step increase, so if you're a teacher, if you go look at the salary scale, Dr. Broom's office is coming back to us about, starting teachers are now number one, but like, is it 15-year master's teachers we think are lagging behind, and sort of like targeting that with some of the surplus that we can do, and then hopefully we can do those things and potentially decrease taxes or do that in the long term, but there's not a whole lot of discussion. We're not the governor. There's not gonna be any like one $2,000 bonus for teachers or anything like that. That's very difficult for us to do. What I presented on with the priorities, so raising the competitiveness of teachers' salaries, continuing to fund programs for incentives to get extra degrees and specializations for our staff. That's far more likely to be where we spend the surplus.
My name is Kayla McGinnis, and this is my dad, McGinnis. A while back, me and my friends smoked in this board regarding reusable lunch trays, and I've come to notice that the recyclable lunch tray program Tap and Stack has not been in use in a while at BHMS, and I want to know if you are aware of this. Reusable trays are cheaper and more sustainable than recycling the trays through Tap and Stack. When will it start again, or is there a better alternative that is more sustainable?
Good evening again. So at Beacon Hill, there's let me just fast forward. I'm working with the Decatur Environmental Sustainability Board, ESB. And what we are looking at doing right now is doing exactly what he's asking. He's going over to a plastic-free lunch. Now, one of the challenges we have is the Sustainability Board wants us to wash dishes, wash the trays and silverware. Now, the challenge with that is, I'm a former high school principal. And I don't think Dr. Spruill or Principal Glenn will want to give a bunch of middle school kids and high school kids stainless steel forks and hard plastic trays. That's a lot to manage. And then we would have to hire more people to come in and serve as dishwashers and to run that line. But we are looking at ways to go plastic free. That's gonna be step one. The Sustainability Board has been in all the meetings that we're having with different companies that will provide those items. And once we get to plastic free, then we'll keep working towards our sustainable goals in the city of Decatur. But it's a process. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you for asking.
That's a long answer, yes. We are working on it.
ESB,
But good question.
Environmental Sustainability Board is after.
All right, thank you. We're at 8:04.
I just wanted to say thank you for this forum. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Putting the time and just having this opportunity.
Thank you. And I think having a student have the last words. That's great. Those of you who stood in line, I apologize if you're able to email us or comment.
Just one closing comment, I think was helpful, since I went to a very long Global School Board Association training recently. For us to remember, this goes to Nicole's question about roles and responsibilities, and it's always, highlighted from Jarvis answering that question about the lunch trays, is that as school board members, we are responsible for policy, budget, and the superintendent. And so I always have to keep this in mind, and that's why we're not here. The school board, association always reminds us we can't micromanage every little thing. So I think that is helpful to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Also, hey, please be safe this weekend, right? Please be safe. It's supposed to be pretty ugly, so